I once drove to my friend's country house alone. The night was pretty peaceful and nice. This was like a 2.5-hour drive, and to get there you have to go through this really old off-map road. But it wasn't my first time driving there, so I wasn't feeling anxious or anything. Anyway, this time like a minute after I came up to that road I got this really strange feeling, like something was following me. I looked at the rearview mirror, 'cause I just couldn't shake the feeling, but nothing was there. So I just told myself it must be the exhaustion as I just finished my shift at work and was on my feet all day. So I continued on my way, and 5 minutes after I saw this lady in the middle of the road. It was strange as there aren't any houses. Around there, and the road isn't exactly a place where you'd go for an evening walk. I stopped because I thought maybe she somehow got lost and asked her if she needed help. She says to me she doesn't remember how she got here, and I tell her I'll take her back home because she said her house is near where I was going. She hopped in, and we drove off, and I dropped her off to her house. She got off and thanked me, and I continued to my friend's house. I tell him about her, and he looks at me and goes, "Nobody lived in that house for years. The family there died on the off-map road in a car accident." We go to sleep, and that night I get sleep paralysis. I'm prone to that. It isn't anything unusual, but it always freaks me out. And that night it wasn't no demons or such. I saw that lady crawl up my bed whispering stuff that I couldn't comprehend. I freak out, obviously. She's standing on top of me now and touching my face. Her face is all weird, full of cuts and bruises and deformed. I finally managed to wake up, and I'm feeling extremely paranoid and anxious. Anyway, the next day I decide to drive back to that house where I dropped her off, and oh my, the house doesn't look like anyone lived there in ages. I go online and try to find some article about the accident my friend told me about. I find a picture of that lady, and the accident happened right there where I picked her up the night before. So yeah, I still get the chills when I think of it.
A few years ago, I went to sleep in my bed and woke up in the middle of the night with someone sleeping next to me. I assumed it was my mom who came to sleep by me. I was pretty confused and tired. I got up to pee and came back, and the person was still tucked into the duvet and sleeping. I woke up again an hour later, and the person was gone, and my door was opened. I looked into the bathroom, and the door was shut, so I assumed my mom was in the toilet. I waited for 5 minutes, and then went to open the door, and there was no one inside. I ran to my parents' room and woke them up and asked my mom if she slept by me. She told me she's been asleep the whole night in my parents' room. No one believes me. It's been about 4 years now. Some people think I hallucinated, but I know what I saw and how I felt. I still think about that experience. I have no idea who or what it was by me, but kind of creepy story, I guess.
In the late 1990s, I was cleaning out my parents' place farmhouse in central Illinois. I was working on the second floor in a small room that my mom had used for storage. I had to go through all the layers and boxes because I didn't know what mom might have stored in there. I generally built up a stack of items to take the car, as well as a pile of garbage. When it was time for another run to the car with an armful of treasures, I took off. When I came back to the room, there was a tube sitting on top of the boxes I had used to support my asterisk pile. Inside the tube I found my grandfather's college diploma from the 1800s. It could not have fallen from a spot in the room. It could not have rolled from a spot in the room. I thanked whatever ancestor helped me out and finished for the day.
I've had a few experiences, but the one that sticks with me is one experience I had while sleeping. I had a dream I was at my grandma's old house sleeping on her living room floor with an old box TV in front of me. On the TV there was an old man. He had a bunch of hoses hooked up to him that I'm assuming we read for medical purposes. My mom was on the phone with him in the other room, so I was just watching him on the phone through the TV. Out of nowhere, he just fell over, and I heard my mom let out a blood-curdling scream. All of a sudden, I felt this strong, dark energy wrap around my feet and shoot up to my head. It was pushing me down so hard that I couldn't move. Then I started to have a seizure. I had no idea what to do, so I closed my eyes in my dream and thought of Archangel Michael, and then I woke up. When I woke up, it felt like I was having a seizure in real life because my body felt so tensed up. I had a similar experience years later at my new house. As soon as I thought of Archangel Michael, I woke up again and that dark energy was gone. Whenever I need protection or I feel like I'm in a potentially dangerous situation, I always call upon Archangel Michael.
In 2018 to 19, sometime in April, I was in a graveyard. Yes, I know that sounds cliché, but it's true. And I was walking around reading people ass names on gravestone paying my respects. And then suddenly I heard this blood-curdling scream that just went on and on and on, long and loud. I just remember I stood there in pure terror, and I just stared at the area of where the noises came from. Up the mountain in the woods. I remember running down through the graves, making sure I didn't stand on anyone, and told my grandpa, who was talking to some artist painting the abbey where I was. I was 14, 15 years old. I should have mentioned that. My grandpa didn't seem to believe me and said it was probably the kids playing in the park next to the graveyard. The screaming didn't sound like kids, and it certainly wasn't coming from the park. No one was reporting missing from the area, and no bodies were found in the area. So I can only assume it was some sort of entity either replaying the last moments before death, or worst case scenario, it was an entity that was attempting to lure someone into the woods. Either way, I get all creeped out.
I've had many, but one of the strangest was while living in Europe years ago. I was living in what once had been a monastery, dating back to the 17th century. On the 4th floor attic, there was a library that had just been renovated. New heating, insulation, new windows, etc. Every time I went up there to study, I was alone, as nobody else went there for some reason. Not once did anyone else go there with me. Not once did I see anyone in there, however. Every time I went there, I always heard strange banging noises, which I thought might be due to the heating, other than they were way too loud for that. In addition, I always felt someone was always behind me, and I always felt unwelcome there. I could literally feel someone standing right behind me, but when I turned around, there was nobody there. I looked around and never found anyone. Because of this, I never stayed there very long. One day I tried to go back there, and once I reached the doorway, even though the door was wide open, it is as if a solid wall was in place. For a few minutes I tried to cross the threshold into the attic, but was absolutely unable to do so, no matter how hard I tried. The exact sensation is very hard to describe because it was not as if I hit anything. There was no bump, but I was simply unable to get through. I tried for about 5 minutes and was mystified, and eventually just gave up attempting to enter. My feet might have been glued in place as they would not go past the doorway. I never saw anything, and I never did mention this to the people staying there with me, but I was always curious. When I first moved in the place, I was repeatedly warned that the place was haunted, but I never believed in ghost stories. Looking back, that whole time I lived there was full of strange and unexplained happenings, which didn't mean a thing to me until I had moved out. Only years later did I start questioning any of the things that happened while I was there. Sometimes I wish I could visit that place again to see if I just imagined everything, or there really is something strange going on. This happened somewhere in Western Europe several decades ago, but I am not going to be more specific than that.